I'm here with Ronda Palazzari, and she's got a grid layout that uses up lots of scraps and some great little photos. So Ronda, will you tell us a little bit about this layout?
Oh, absolutely. It's a simple design that I use as my go-to design all the time because when you're working so much and you have different things to do, I think that this is a good, strong base of a design.
Yeah, the grid allows you to not have to think too much.
It does it. You're not thinking too much about it. So to start with the grid, all I did was you can see the dots of the pencil marks, and this is just to help me space. So these are about 1 inch apart.
Does it matter how far they are? It's whatever
No,
you
that's
want.
the beauty of a grid is you can go small, you can go large, just whatever you're working for at that moment. Then the next step, what I do is to draw in the lines, let's say horizontally, and then I go back and add in more dots to do vertically because I don't want to confuse the lines and get wonky lines in there. So very simple.
I'll take that for you.
Thank you, ma'am. So once my grid is complete, this is where I stop and look at the design and go, well, maybe I don't want the lines to go all the way to the edge, so I just take a white eraser and erase back some of the lines to give me some of the design elements, some shorter, some longer.
So I like that you're keeping them uneven.
I do. I like things uneven. I don't want necessarily things perfect because I can't really achieve perfectness. So I want it just a little wonky like my life.
And I also think that it adds a little bit of movement to something that is otherwise static.
Exactly, exactly. So once the lines are drawn, this is where we have fun. We just take a ruler and with a permanent black marker, and we draw on these what looks like stitched lines. And all it is you're skipping as like a skip, hop, and a jump with the black pen and the ruler, and you just skip down.
That's very cool, and I can see that after you've erased, it really does look like stitching, which is really neat.
Exactly. It's a great way to fake a stitch, you know?
That's really cool. Now, what about these photos?
Oh, these photos are awesome because they come from this pattern paper pack, and it's a big sheet that comes with lots of Polaroid-like shapes.
I love those Polaroid frames.
I
They're
do too. They're so awesome. And
you know what I really like is how they're aged around the edge. It just makes it look more real.
So it makes it look like those ones in the 70s.
Because I've tried to make my own Polaroid frames and they never quite have that aged look, you know?
So all I did was take the little strips here and I cut them out individually and placed my photos on top of the
That's
Polaroids.
cool. Let me cut some of those out for you. And you can tell us a little bit about all the different elements that you've used here.
So what's great about this layout is, like I said, it's a cleanup layout. So anything like 1s and 2s of embellishments that I've had, I've just added them into the layout. And you can, if you don't have like a wooden ruler, you could add like a little strip from measuring tape trim. It's great to clean up your desk with just what's ever there.
So I have your little frames that are cut right here, and I can see how easy this is. Now, these are obviously bigger than 1 inch.
Right.
So I think that's interesting that you put these photos that actually don't fit into your grid, but the layout works, and I can't figure out why. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think it works on a couple levels. One, I popped up this photo to make it stand out a little more from the other ones, but I went over the grid.
So it gives you a real focal point on the layout.
It does, and if you notice, there's a lot of things in threes. Threes are an important design element. Odd numbers are better, so there's 3 photos on here. Or there may be different things like, even though the pattern papers don't match, they all come together because they're being used in the grid.
Interesting. And I notice you have 3 stamped images, for instance, too.
Oh, these 3 stamped images are so fun. They're hand carved, and these are, again, these are leftover bits. So when I carve stamps and there's those little bits of leftover, I can't help myself but to do something with it.
It's a real cleanup layout all around. And I know you actually only recently learned how to carve stamps, and you're so good at it. So I'm guessing that you've been practicing.
I had an excellent teacher who taught me how to do it, and I have been practicing. So thank you so much for teaching me, Julie.
That wasn't a compliment for me, but what I'm going to tell you is I think it's interesting how you've used circles in here too, and the circles and the squares create a lot of interesting movement.
They do, and then again, the shorter lines help with the dynamics of the layout and just bringing everything around. You can see too, the title is up here, but it also stretches across the layout to bring the readers down to the bottom of it.
Now, Ron, did you have any advice, like if I don't have this pen or I don't have a ruler like this, are there other choices I can make that'll look just as good?
Everything will look just as good. You just go pull out your leftovers and see what they have, even if you don't think it matches, because it will bring it together once you put the layout on the grid. It just kind of brings that design element together.
Okay, I also want to talk about, this is really interesting to me what you've done here, is you've actually cut down the cardstock that we started with and you've mounted it onto a piece of patterned paper.
I think that when you mount it onto the pattern paper, it gives it just this final effect of it. It frames the layout and it grounds the layout because this kind of looks floaty on just the pattern, on just the cardstock.
So let's look at some different choices, and why don't you talk us through why you chose that design of pattern paper as opposed to something
else. Will you trim this down for me?
I will. I'd be happy to do that. So why don't you talk us through some of our pattern papers?
So with this particular pattern paper, it's with a smooth edge on it, and it's got a very small design, and I think that that's quite interesting. In this paper pack, I could have used a variety of papers. Now this one has the grid too, which would be kind of fun, placed right behind it. And if I wanted something a little subtle in the background, that's a great choice. As opposed to something like this that has these design elements on it. When I place a piece of paper on it, you're just gonna get these.
Oh, and it's weird. The stripes there are just a little bit odd.
Exactly, and then the red color too it's distracting for the background. So you don't wanna really go with the reds, or you go with a neutral color.
Well, that's great, Ronda. Thank you. It gives us so many ideas.